Chapter 5 Basic Study Design Outlines Hybrid Designs Large, Simple, and Pragmatic Clinical Trials Studies of Equivalency and Non-Inferiority Adaptive Designs Hybrid Designs Hybrid methodology is also known as bricolage, triangulation, or mixed methodology. All of these names refer to the combining or mixing of more than one methodology, approach, or conceptual model to investigate a particular problem or issue from different relevant angles or point of views. Mixing qualitative and quantitative is a common hybrid approach. Types of hybrid designs: Type 1 hybrid designs, Type 2 hybrid designs, Type 3 designs. What is a pragmatic trial? The concern of whether trials produce results applicable to everyday practice was raised many decades ago. Schwartz and Lelouch, back in 1967, coined the term explanatory and pragmatic to differentiate trials. The term explanatory was used to describe trials that aim to evaluate the efficacy of an intervention in a well-defined and controlled setting, whereas the term pragmatic was used for trials designed to test the effectiveness of the intervention in a broad routine clinical practice. The explanatory trial is the best designed to explore if and how an intervention works, and the whole experiment is designed in order to control for all known biases and confounders so that the intervention's effect is maximized. Usually, the intervention under examination is compared with a placebo or with another active treatment. What is a pragmatic trial? The pragmatic trial, on the other hand, is designed to test interventions in the full spectrum of everyday clinical settings in order to maximize applicability and generalizability. The research question under investigation is whether an intervention actually works in real life. The intervention is evaluated against other ones, established or not, of the same or different class in routine practice settings. Pragmatic trials measure a wide spectrum of outcomes, mostly patient-centered, whereas explanatory trials focus on measurable symptoms or markers, clinical or biological. What is a pragmatic trial? The questions addressed by these trials may be not only of the sort what treatment works better, but also what is the best way of providing the treatment. Can something shown to work in an academic setting be translated to a typical community medical care setting? Main differences between pragmatic and explanatory trials. Explanatory trials focus towards homogeneity so that the errors and biases will influence the results as little as possible, while pragmatic trials a race towards maximal heterogeneity in all aspects, for example, patients, treatments, clinical settings, and etc. In order to overcome the inherited heterogeneity, which leads to dilution of the effect, pragmatic trials must be large enough to increase power to detect small effects and simple in their design. Simple trials are easier to plan, perform, and follow up. Thorpe et al., a few years later, introduced the Pragmatic Explanatory Continuum Indicator Summary tool. PRECIS was created to enable investigators to design trials acknowledging the explanatory pragmatic continuum in 10 domains: eligibility criteria, flexibility of the experimental intervention, practitioner expertise, experimental, flexibility of the comparison intervention, practitioner expertise comparison, follow-up intensity, outcomes, participant compliance, practitioner adherence, primary outcomes. To illustrate, A very pragmatic trial across these 10 domains would be: there are no inclusion or exclusion criteria. Practitioners are not constricted by guidelines on how to apply the experimental intervention. The experimental intervention is applied by all practitioners, thus covering the full spectrum of clinical settings. The best alternative treatments are used for comparison with no restrictions on their application. The comparative treatment is applied by all practitioners, covering the full spectrum of clinical settings. No formal follow-up sections. The primary outcome is a clinical meaningful one that doesn't require extensive training to assess. There are no plans to improve or alter compliance for the experimental or the comparative treatment. No special strategy to motivate practitioners' adherence to the trial's protocol. The analysis includes all participants in an intention to treat fashion. What is adaptive design clinical trial? An adaptive design is defined as a design that allows modifications to the trial and/or statistical procedures of the trial after its initiation without undermining its validity and integrity. The purpose is to make clinical trials more flexible, efficient, and fast. Due to the level of flexibility involved, these trial designs are also termed as flexible designs. What is adaptive design clinical trial? A study that includes a prospectively planned opportunity for modification of one or more specified aspects of the study design and a hypothesis based on analysis of data, usually interim data, from subjects in the study. Analysis of the accumulating study data are performed at pre-planned time points within the study, with or without formal statistical hypothesis testing. What is adaptive design clinical trial? An adaptation is referred to a change made to the trial procedure and/or statistical procedure during the conduct of a clinical trial. Trial procedures may be the eligibility criteria, study dose, treatment duration, study endpoints, laboratory testing procedures, diagnostic procedures, criteria for evaluation and assessment of clinical responses. Statistical procedures include randomization, study design, study hypothesis, sample size, data monitoring and interim analysis, statistical analysis plan, and/or methods for data analysis. Types of adaptive design trials. Based on adaptations employed, commonly considered adaptive design methods in clinical trials include an adaptive randomization design, a group sequential design, a sample size re-estimation design, a drop the loser design, an adaptive dose finding design, a biomarker adaptive design, an adaptive treatment switching design, a hypothesis adaptive design, an adaptive seamless phase 2 and 3 trial design, a multiple adaptive design. Types of adaptive design trials. Another way of classifying adaptive design clinical trials is by categorizing them under different rules, which are mostly 4 in number. Allocation rule defines how the subjects will be allocated to different arms in a trial and comprises a response adaptive randomization and covariate adaptive allocation. Sampling rule defines how many subjects will be sampled at the next stage and consists of sample size re-estimation design, both blinded and unblinded, and drop the loser design. Stop-in rule defines when to stop the trial and consists of group sequential design and adaptive treatment switching design. Decision rule comprises changes not covered under the other 3 categories and consists of hypothesis adaptive design and change the primary endpoint or statistical method or patient population design. Sometimes a fifth rule is added consisting of multiple adaptations, also comprising adaptive seamless phase 2 and 3 trial designs. Drop the loser design. In this design, the subjects detected to have received inferior treatments at the interim analysis can be dropped out. Based on the findings of the interim analysis, additional treatment arms can also be added at this stage. This design is useful in phase 2 clinical development, especially when there are uncertainties regarding the dose levels. Typically, drop the loser design is a two-stage design. At the end of the first stage, the inferior arms will be dropped based on some pre-specified criteria. The winners will then proceed to the next stage. Some prefer to term these designs as pick the winner designs. Adaptive treatment switching design. In treatment switching design, shifting the patient from one treatment option to other is allowed if there are concerns about the safety or efficacy. But in such type of trials, estimation of survival rate will become very difficult if the disease in question has poor prognosis. A high percentage of subjects may switch treatments due to disease progression, leading to confusion. In this case, sample size adjustment for achieving a desired power is necessary. Hypothesis adaptive design. An adaptive hypothesis design refers to a design that allows modifications or changes in hypotheses based on interim analysis results. Adaptive hypothesis design is often finalized before database lock or prior to data unblinding. Some examples include the switch from a superiority hypothesis to a non-inferiority hypothesis and the switch between the primary study endpoint and the secondary endpoints. Advantages of adaptive designs. Potential modifications are approved beforehand by regulatory authorities and ethics committees, and thus there is no need to file protocol amendments. Logistics for changing treatments or doses can also be planned upfront. There is complete flexibility to react to unanticipated events, and options exist to introduce any new doses, change endpoints, and etc. Credibility of results is also maintained, especially with blinded data or in the presence of firewalls, where only a limited number of people have access to the results. Advantages of adaptive designs. Many compounds in drug development eventually fail, but these designs allow earlier detection and early stoppage of a clinical trial. At the same time, pharmaceutical companies waste less on unsuccessful compounds and can more quickly reassign resources to alternative drugs within their pipelines. Trial subjects are used more efficiently and fewer subjects are given ineffective compounds, ineffective doses, or doses that are unnecessarily high. Disadvantages of adaptive designs. Implementing an adaptive design in drug development comes at a price. Another risk is that ad hoc changes based on unblinded data may jeopardize the credibility of the study. There is also the risk of development of a tendency of conducting adapting trials too early, thereby jeopardizing the overall study findings.